Chapter 25. The Lady of the Lake. The air in Camelot was thick with the scent of damp earth and the uneasy silence that followed the king's mysterious collapse. Arthur remained in a death-like slumber and, while the court whispered about curses, Arthur was forced to take the mantle of regent. "He's not slept for 2 days," Merlin confided in Elund. "The knights have marshalled the perimeter a broken bar. Arthur has called the lords and law judges with regards relations in Dift and up in Gwynedd about the sea taxes. The king of Niceman demands more tribute and Arthur is debating the impasse of Hywel down at Street David's. It's too much for him to do at once." So Elund, with the weight of the embrace in her mind that she would rather shake and the lingering uncertainty over the marriage to Arthur that could, any day, be revived, went to see Arthur in the council chamber. "Merlin said you were here," Elund said when he finally noticed her standing in the doorway. He looked at her, fraught emotions swinging between the responsibility of the crown and the uneasy feeling he now had towards the guard who, up to then, he had barely noticed. "I am well, Aled," Arthur told her, stiffly. "I take my father's place today for my kingdom." Elund glanced between the pile of vellum and back to Arthur. "And perhaps you should rest," she suggested. "There is a lot to consider for you. What do you know about it?" Arthur snapped. "You're the bastard of my enemy." Elund said nothing, and turned, glimpsing Gwen in the shadows. Should she have gone with Kilgore? What was keeping her in Camelot was something she didn't want to admit. When she got to the door, Elund felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned back, and looked at him in the eye. "Perhaps I should have married your father, and been the queen. Then I could have at least helped you with this." Arthur stepped away, and nodded his head slightly. "As it is, I'll return to Morgana." And she stepped through the door and swept down the passageway before Arthur could stop her or before she gave in to the urge to remain. "Come with me, down to the lower town," Merlin asked Elund, when he saw her pacing the battlements. And she followed him, through the shadows of the outskirts of Camelot's citadel, to the back of a traveling bounty hunter's wagon. A sense of danger overcame Elund as the prisoners were removed, Sir Hector handing over money for them, and the guards taking them to the dungeons for crimes anonymous. Except one girl. Merlin mingled with the guards and stood beside her as Sir Gawain was assigned to bring her to the dungeons. Her eyes were bright, like liquid gold, and a spirit that seemed to be flickering out. Elund watched Merlin raise a hand, clearly so he could get close to her, but she put a hand on his arm. "She's a monster, Merlin," Elund muttered, stepping out from the gloom of an alleyway. Merlin jumped, shielding the cage with his body. "She's a person, Elund. She's been hunted, trapped like an animal. She hasn't done anything wrong." Elund looked at the girl. She saw the grime, the fear, and the undeniable scent of the wild. She also saw the way Merlin looked at her, not with the clumsy pining Arthur showed for Gwen, but with a soul-deep recognition. "The knights are already scouring the woods for a beast," Elund warned, her voice low. "There's a bastard killing in the night. If Arthur finds out you're harboring a girl with those eyes, he'll see a threat to his father's city." "Then help me," Merlin pleaded as Gawain took Freya by the shoulder. "You know what it's like to be hunted for who you are." Elund felt the familiar sting of it, up to and including the forced betrothal and marriage, the Saxon foundling, the mercenaire, the nuisance of the court. "I'll buy you time. I'll lead the scouts toward the northern ridge tonight." "But Merlin, some shadows can't be outrun." 88,888,888. The presence of the bastard grew more violent, and Arthur's frustration reached a breaking point. He was redirecting all the guilt and shock of his father's actions into the hunt. He spent his days with Gwen, seeking her gentle counsel to soothe the image of Elund, but his nights were spent with steel in hand. In the armory, the tension finally snapped. "Where is he?" Arthur roared, looking for Merlin. "The beast was sighted near the tunnels, and my manservant is nowhere to be found." Elund, who was busy mending a leather strap, didn't look up, the memory of his body beside hers momentarily, when she had been imprisoned by Arthur, revived in her mind. "Perhaps he's tired of watching you play the hero while the king sleeps, Arthur." Arthur turned on her, his eyes blazing. "I don't need your lip, Elund. I have a city to protect. If Merlin is hiding something, If he's compromised, he's human, she snapped, standing up to face him. The acerbic energy between them was brittle. Unlike you, he doesn't have the luxury of distracting himself with a lady-in-waiting whenever things get difficult. He feels things, Arthur, deeply. And I don't. Arthur stepped into her space. His voice a low, dangerous growl. You think I enjoyed watching my father try to buy you? You think I enjoyed the fact that I can't even look at you without... He broke off, and kicked a helmet, which was surprisingly sturdy. Elune watched as the prince pretended, without much success, to shake off the terrible pain in his foot. I think you're using this hunt of wrongdoers to kill the things you're afraid of, she whispered. 88,888,888. Over the next week, Merlin became markedly distant. He was present for most of his future, but, instead of being in the castle or grounds, on with Gaius, he was nowhere to be seen. Elune one morning, wanting someone to walk down to the river with to collect the first of the spring flowers, climbed Gaius's steps. The physician shook his head when she asked where her friend was. He does seem to be spending a lot of time down in the meadow, towards Haldref, Gaius told her. With the girl, Elune said aloud. She looked around the room, and then at Gaius. She is magical, she told him, and involved in the killing taking place at night. Elune paused. It's a bastard. A bastard, Gaius repeated, glancing at Elune, but not pushing why she knew this. Oh, well, in that case, that is easily remedied. He turned to the thick book resting on a lectern. I can deal with it, and Arthur must kill it. He then looked back to Elune. Go to get Merlin. He will know how to convince Arthur. Because he, too, has magic? The words just came out without thought, Elune's mind in the only deduction she could make about Merlin and the girl, that he was in love. Whatever made you say such a thing? Gaius asked sharply. Then he waved a hand. Go, Gardale-led, and find him. If he is with this magical girl, she is destined to die along with the creature she unwittingly brought to the city. 88,888,888. The end came by the lake. Elune watched from a copse of trees as Arthur and the knights closed in. She saw the bastard, the golden-eyed panther, transform back into the fragile girl Merlin had tried to save. Arthur's sword was out, but he hesitated. He saw Merlin cradling the girl, heard the heart-wrenching sobs echoing over the water. For a moment, the regent of Camelot saw the man Merlin was, and the man he himself had almost become. When Freya breathed her last, the silence that followed screamed louder than Kilgore had when he had been freed from his dungeon. The knights retreated, sensing a grief too private for their presence, but Arthur stood frozen, his sword arm dropping to his side. He looked toward the trees and caught Elune's gaze. She offered neither comfort nor barb. She simply nodded, acknowledging the heartbreak that had just unfolded as Merlin's heart shattered and Arthur's worldview collapse. He was taking on his father's mantle, and knitting it with his own values. She needed to step away from all of this, and yet, her heart softened when she saw the king-to-be. And she fought the urge to overcorrect with coldness and brutality. As they rode back to the citadel, Arthur was silent. The shock of his father's illness, the guilt over Freya, and the constant friction with Elune had reached a fever pitch. He found it hard to handle the intensity of the Saxon girl who saw through every mask he wore. In the courtyard, he threw down his reins and stalked to the armory with no words. Elune, after a time, took his horse with hers, then deliberately left, and sought invisibility in the kitchens of Camelot, in the bustle and busyness of the place, and she watched for a time meals being prepared, meals being collected. As the evening drew to a cold, spring night, when Elune crossed the courtyard so late into the night that it was nearly morning, she saw Arthur cross it too, from the direction of the low town. When in his company they were speaking quietly to each other, a private dialogue. Both were smiling, a hand and another just within touching distance. They sat near the steps, and Elune heard Arthur speak of his father, of the laws, and of the peace he hoped to bring. He poured his emotions to her, seeking a harbor where he wasn't constantly challenged or reminded of his own failures. Elune watched from the doorway to the hall. shrinking back into the shadow. Then, she felt the sense of another person beside her, and turned to see Merlin. In the moonlight she could see his features, which were fixed into a blank expression. "He's taking her with him," Merlin said quietly, "as he has every right to," Elune replied, her voice cold. "They are well suited. She is a lovely young lady." "You love him?" Merlin noted, after a time of silence had passed between them. "No," Elune snapped the rebuttal, the lie, back to her friend. Then, she turned her head, looking out towards the horizon, toward the Loggerlands she had nearly been sold to protect. "I admire the man he wants to be. But the man he is. He's still his father's son. And I am still a girl washed up on a riverbank that her father wants dead." Elune moved away from the wall, her jaw set, and began to walk towards the stairs that would take her to Morgana's chambers. When she saw that Merlin was close beside her, she sighed and told him, "Merlin, the great dragon is restless. A broken bar. I can feel his presence in the earth when you are near a broken bar." They had not yet discussed Kilgara's escape, nor Elune's role in his freedom. "You escaped because of Morgana's magic, which Kilgara induced. A broken bar was that his bargain with you. He willed me to come with him. A broken bar vowed to protect me. And in a time in the future when the world looked very different, when light faded from every aspect of the world, then the dragon would keep his promise. You are treading a very dangerous path, Elune," Merlin told her as they climbed the stairs. "I have no one, Merlin. No one I can truly count on. I must make allies where I can. I have a dragon." Merlin smiled and touched her hand. "You have me. And I think I have you. If Arthur won't face the darkness, then we will have to for him together."